Okay, so welcome once again to today's lesson. As you already know, today we are going to tackle a very important programming language, my favorite of all programming languages. That's my favorite. And today we are going to start with JavaScript. We are going to learn a little bit of intro. Then from there, you move on to React. So please take this very important uh, because this will form the basis for our React course, and you should understand a little bit of JavaScript before we dive into React. Okay, so JavaScript. Now, why JavaScript? Now, if you look at the web pages that we've designed so far, they are just static, nothing moves. It doesn't, it just display information to us and nothing else. There's no calculation, there's no fetching of data from anywhere, just blank page, nothing moves and whatever. Although we can use CSS to move items on the page, but mostly it's easier using JavaScript to manipulate your HTML content. So JavaScript kind of bring life to your HTML body. Now, JavaScript is the most popular programming language. It's easier to learn. That is why we are. For me, I prefer using JavaScript as intro when I'm teaching people how to program because it's easier to learn and you don't need to install anything to actually start having JavaScript. Just open your favorite browser, right click on it, and go inspect. Mostly it's inspect element most on most browsers. Then just go to the console and that's it. You can write any JavaScript here and it should work. So this is a valid JavaScript code. As you can see, 5 plus 2 is 7. You can do whatever you want to do, any JavaScript code at all, and it will run perfectly. So that is why JavaScript is so popular. It's very easy to use. It's very easy to set up. As you can see, I didn't install anything and I'm running JavaScript code. So you don't need to install anything to use JavaScript.
Yes, please, I think you cannot see your screen. It's black.
Oh, is it okay now?
Yes, now it's okay.
Okay, so as I said, you don't need to install anything to use JavaScript. Just open your browser. So I think I might have to
Yeah,
start
zoom
again.
in a
Open your
little.
okay. Oh, it's fine. Is it fine? Is this okay?
Yes, yes, it is. It is.
Okay. So
Yeah.
just right click on your favorite browser, then pick inspect. Then you get this window. Just go to the console. Now here on the console, you can write any JavaScript code. So look at it. If I write 5 plus 2 or 5 plus 3, well, I'm getting 8. So it's easier to use JavaScript because it's easier to set up. You don't need to install anything and you can have access to your code. You can just write code and let it run easily without installing anything. So that's the power of JavaScript. You can write anything at all on this console and it should, if it's a valid JavaScript, it should execute for you to see the result. So that is JavaScript for you. Now, someone may ask, what can JavaScript do? Before I go on what JavaScript can do, there are a lot of apps that are built using JavaScript. For example, the Skype that we are on now is built using JavaScript. Now, most apps that you are on the Play Store are built using JavaScript. Example is Instagram. is built using JavaScript. The app Facebook is built using Java. Most of like these powerful web apps that you see or interact with have JavaScript being one of the core programming languages that they use to build them. So if you take JavaScript seriously, you can do a lot of things with it. Now, what can JavaScript do? Now, you can use JavaScript to change the content of it. You can use JavaScript to change HTML content. So, for example, let's have a simple page. So nothing fancy. Let me put p tag here and give it an ID of demo. Now, if I run this, let's go to JS. Now, as you can see, there's nothing on the page. You can use JavaScript to insert data or change the content of HTML elements. So this p tag, I can use JavaScript to change the content. So let me just don't worry about what I'm typing. You understand later. Now, what I'm typing is in JavaScript. And when I load the page, as you can see, you have hello world. So you can use JavaScript to change the content of an HTML document. So as you can see, the p tag, there was nothing inside, but I'm using JavaScript to put something inside the p tag. So that is one thing I can do with JavaScript. You can also use JavaScript to change the HTML attribute. Now, to demonstrate this, I'm going to do something nice over here. So this is how to change the content of HTML using JavaScript. And let me end this and just create a button. So I have these images. Then let me have another one. Let's see what we have. So I have this Bob on my page, and as you can see, this Bob is just an image tag, okay? And I'm just showing this image, light pick Bob off. That's what I'm showing. Now I have another image called pick Bob on. And let's see what that one looks like. Now you can use JavaScript to change the attribute of an element. So let's go back to the off state. Now this is turn on. Now when you click on this button, you want to change the element to let it appear as if the light has been turned on. So HTML has what we call on click. Then what we're going to do is so let's call it, let's give it an ID, call it img. Then the element that you are going to change, the attribute that you are going to change is the src. Okay, is equal to. Now, when someone clicks on that button, we want to put the light on there. So this one will be on. Okay. Then when someone clicks on the light off, we want to change. No, I will maximize it so that you see what I'm doing. Let me increase. Oops. I think this is okay, right? Is it okay? So let me copy down click for this. When someone clicks on the button off, we want to show the off element. Now let's test and see if it works. Then I will explain if it doesn't work. So when I click on the on button, as you can see, the light bulb turns on. When I click on the off, it goes on and off, on and off. Now what is happening is I'm using JavaScript to change the attribute there. You know, to set an image, to show an image on a page, you have to use the src attribute of the img tag. Okay, and this I'm just using JavaScript to change the src. Look at it. This is the attribute. It's an src. So when someone click on the light on, I just take the image and change the src to this particular image. Okay, when someone clicks on the light off, I just change the src, the attribute, to bulb off, and this is what is causing this nice effect here, on and off. So you can use JavaScript to change the content of HTML. You can use JavaScript to change the attribute of an element. You can also use JavaScript to change the style. Okay, the style of an element. So let's let me clean this, comment it, and bring this guy on. Let's bring this guy back. Okay, so that was our first example of changing HTML content with JavaScript. Now we can use JavaScript to change the style of this element. So let's say okay, now let me, this is what you have. Now you can use JavaScript to change the style. So you can do this. Document.get element by ID. So I'm fetching that particular element, and you know, when you use ID, you are going to get only one element. So dot style, that I can do dot color is equal to red, and voila. I've used JavaScript to change the style of the HTML element. So this is how you can use JavaScript to change the styling of an element. So you can also use JavaScript to change the style of an element. You can also use JavaScript to show or hide element. So let's say at some point in time you want to hide a particular element, you can use JavaScript to hide it. Okay, so let me comment this out. Now you have this nice element over here. let's say after 5 seconds, we want to hide this element. Let me introduce a very unique JavaScript helper function. It's called set timeout. So set timeout, what it will do is it will execute whatever code that you put inside after a particular second, milliseconds. So let's say after 5 seconds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is milliseconds. So 5 seconds just will be 500 milliseconds. 5,000 milliseconds is equals to 5 seconds. So I'm telling JavaScript that execute this code after 5 seconds. So what I'm going to do is let's use JavaScript to hide that particular element. So document.get element by ID, demo, the style, the display is equals to none. So what this one will do is it will hide this element. So let's see what happened. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as you can see, the element is hidden. So you can use JavaScript to also hide elements. That's what you can use JavaScript for. So these are some of the things that you can use JavaScript to do. You can use JavaScript to change the content of HTML elements. You can use, that's what you did initially. You can use JavaScript to change the attribute of HTML element. HTML element. That's what we did over here, where you turn on and off a bulb. You can use it to change the style, and you can use it to hide or show an element. Okay, so that is what you can use JavaScript to do. So JavaScript and Java are completely different languages, both in concept and design. So if you have heard Java before, JavaScript is different from Java. They are different programming language. They are not the same. Okay, the design is different. The how the code is written in JavaScript is different from how it is in Java. Now, where do you place JavaScript? If you remember, I mentioned this before, that in HTML, JavaScript code is inserted between script tags. So as you can see, if you want to execute JavaScript, you have to put that JavaScript inside a script tag. So script, open and close, and put your JavaScript code within it. So what you do is you open a tag called script and close it. Then you put your JavaScript content within it, and automatically it will run for you. Okay. Now it has to be within a script tag. If you put it outside, it's going to treat it as a normal HTML. So if I put this one outside, nothing happens. It will just see it as if it is a normal HTML. So it has to be within the script tag for it to work. So that's where you put your JavaScript code. So sometimes you will see something like this. You see scripts. So as you can see, you can have any number of script tags. It doesn't matter. So some old JavaScript, you have to do type. Hold on, my screen is misbehaving. So you have to do type, then test JavaScript. Now, this is not necessary because the default scripting language for the web is JavaScript. So you don't need to do this. So you can do this or that. Any of them would work. Okay. So if I copy this and put it here, we'll do the same thing. So now you don't need to manually add the test, the type test underscore test forward slash JavaScript to tell the browser that whatever you're putting inside there is JavaScript. So you can just write the script tag without the type. So placing JavaScript, sometimes you can place your JavaScript code inside the header or the body. Now, it's advisable that you put your JavaScript code inside the body. However, you can also put your JavaScript code in the header. So let's do what we did right now. I can just copy this and put it inside the header and see what happens. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it works just as it was inside the body. But the preferred option is to put all your JavaScript code inside the body of your HTML. Because JavaScript, if you put it on top, mostly it takes a little bit time for your page to render. So always put your JavaScript code inside your HTML body. Okay, now just as we did with CSS, you can put your JavaScript code in an external file. Then you reference it inside your HTML document. So you can just create a folder called JS, then put all your JavaScript inside. So my JS dot, let me see my functions, JS. Okay, it has to be .js. Then just like we did there, let me go and copy this one, put it here. Now let's run and make sure everything is working. So this nice element is there. After 5 minutes, it's not. What happened? There's something wrong. Oh, I don't need to put a tag. Since if you do the JS, you don't need to put the script tag on it. So let's go to our JS, and it's also on the header over here. Let me this will hide it. Let me take it off. So now our element should be there without hiding. Now, mind you, we've created a JavaScript code that contains all our functions. So you can create as many functions you want. Then what you do is you can just link it in your JavaScript code, just like we did with CSS. This external JavaScript. So you do script, you do src, then you go to the part where your JavaScript code is. So my functions.js. So let's see what happens. Let's see if we get the JavaScript code. It's not working. So vpage source. So this is our code. Click on it. Okay. Okay. So I think the linking, there's a problem with the linking. So src. Oh, okay. So I made a mistake. I placed it within the image folder, which shouldn't be the case. So should be out. Let's move it so that it's on the same level. Okay. So now this should be fine. Let's go to our page. Let me bring it back. So after 5 minutes, after 5 seconds, our element hides because we are now referencing the JS file that we just created, and that has a functionality to hide the element. So just like CSS, you can also write all your JavaScript code in one document and reference them. It makes it easier to read and easier to see what if your page has an issue, you know which file to look for. And you can use the same JavaScript on different pages. Okay, so that is one. So JavaScript has a lot of ways to display data to let the user know what is happening. There are a lot of ways to do that. One is to use what you've already seen, the inner HTML. Okay, so instead of hiding it, let's just change it. So if you want to output or display something to the user, you can do what you call inner HTML, and it's on div, p tag, span, and all those things. You can just insert document within that particular element using the inner HTML attribute. Okay, so on the page, you have hello world on the page. So that is one way you can use inner HTML. The next one is my favorite, that is console. So I can just do console.log. Okay, then you can put whatever you want to, but that one will be on the console. So this is a log. Okay, if you want to show the user something, this one will be on the console. So when the page loads, you have to go to inspect element, inspect, then you go to the console tag, and you see your output. So you have inner HTML that like insert content into the HTML document, the console.log that will log something on the console for you. So as you're debugging or you are writing your code and you want to see what is going on, you can put all those ones inside the console. Then you see what is actually happening inside your code. So something like the sum of 4 and 5 is, then let's log it. You can do something like this. This will be on the console. So that's another way. You can use console.log. You have console.error, console.info, a lot of them. Okay, just log something on the console. This one will show an error. So we can use a lot of these. Check the JavaScript documentation to see the options that you have. The next one that you can use is the alert. Okay, you can just do alert. Okay, to continue. So that one, it prevents the user from doing anything. If the user has to do what you want it to, yeah, the person has to click OK or wherever for the page to continue. So if you do alert, put your message inside, you get something like, you get this dialog box, and as you can see, the page is loading. Until I click on it, it will load. So when I click on it, now everything is okay. So that is how you can output or display something for the user to see. You have inner HTML, alert, and console.log. Now the next thing that you're going to look at is the actual JavaScript statement. So I think when we started with our introduction to programming languages, when I took the class, I did a little bit of JavaScript. So this is how JavaScript looks like. If you've already seen it, it just use some special keywords, and that's it. So this is a simple initialization in JavaScript. So the let keyword is used to create block variables. So if I use let, I can use it within a particular scope. If I leave out that scope, I won't have access to it. So if you want to create a variable, you just bring the keyword let, then the variable name, then you assign your data to it. So this is a simple JavaScript statement. So the keyword, the variable, and the content of that particular variable. Now, as you can see, there's a semicolon after the statement. So let me do something like this. Let me have another one. Okay, so for every statement, you can end it with a semicolon. In JavaScript, it's not compulsory, but I'm going to make it a rule of thumb. Always make sure your JavaScript element, your JavaScript statements are terminated. Always ends with a semicolon. Okay, because it makes it easier to know where each statement ends. Aside the let, there's one keyword that is const, like constant. So z. Now the difference between let and const is if you use let to declare a variable, you can reassign another content to that particular variable. But if you use const, that means that for the lifetime of that project or of that code, that you can't change that content. For example, I can come down and say y is equal to 8. Okay, the compiler won't complain. But if I come and do something, so let's run, let's do console.log s plus y, and now you should have 13 on the console. Let's go to the console. Voila, you have 13. Now, if I declare, if I come again and do z is equals to, let's say 2. Now let's go to the console and see what happened. Now JavaScript is complaining. That means that you can only, when you use const to declare a variable, you can't reassign it. That's the difference between the const and the let keyword. So this is just a simple statement in JavaScript. Now, you can do addition and multiplication, whatever you want to do, just like in any programming language. You can just do the same here. So today I just wanted to do a little bit of introduction to JavaScript, practice with inner HTML, then changing of the color, the styling, and you can play with the variable declaration. We will do more JavaScript the next time we meet. Today I just wanted to be short. This is where we started. We started from the introduction and we are now at the statement. So just go through this basis. The next time we meet, we will take the syntax, comment, variable, and most of these things we've done them in the introduction. So I'll just run through it. So please go through the document, W3 schools, and just go through and see how JavaScript works. So at least go up to operators and try as much as possible to do the examples that are shown in the on the website. So if anyone has a question, the floor is open for questions. Any question? Okay. Alpha, if you have anything, you can. If I left anything that you think will be important, you can add it.
Yeah, good evening, guys. Yeah, I think today's class was very, very, very good. The introduction was very, very key. So I think you mostly touched on all the introductions we would need for JavaScript. So so far so good. This will give us a solid understanding into the following class, into the next session. So far I think everything you said was okay. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't want to take much time today. So just go through it, understand. I don't want to bombard you because that is the basis. We are the React can't come if you don't go through this. So just go take your time, and if you don't understand anything, just go through the video again, or use the W3 schools to just know how things are done in JavaScript. Mr. Body, do you have any question for me or George?
Yeah, so before Mr. Body comes in, so you touched on the videos. Yeah, we've been uploading the videos on YouTube. So I think you guys should make it a point. If you probably don't get some concepts, you can always go to the YouTube channel and then watch some of our classes. So try and watch them, because we don't really see activity enough on the channel. And then you can also share with your friends, because the more you share and then they also get to know how basic it is, they can also probably join the class. So yeah, that was just by the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Personally, that is why I've tried to shorten the class, because I think if the video is too long, people find it difficult to get to understand it. So I prefer make it shorter for people to understand and follow. With just a little bit of time, you'll be able to learn a lot. So that's it. The videos will be on YouTube as well.